The damper pedal. It makes everything sound better, right? It makes legato connection easier, right? It obscures what the fingers are doing, right? It shouldn't be used at the beginning of learning, whether you're a beginner student or just learning a new piece, right? The topic of sustain pedal might just be the topic where there is the most misinformation online. So welcome to this 3-part series on using the pedal in practice. In this video, we're going to talk about something that's almost never touched on by teachers, and that is the importance of using the pedal as often as possible in your practice. Rubinstein said, "I'm convinced the pedal is the soul of the piano." Chopin said, "The correct employment of the pedal is a study for life." Czerny said of Beethoven, "His hands could scarcely span a tenth. He made frequent use of the pedals, much more frequent than is indicated in his works." And Busoni said, "The pedal is the moonlight streaming down on a landscape." Yet incredibly often, teachers tell their students to practice without the pedal. That is the easy way out of a very challenging problem. Now first, if you think of the pedal as a tool to sustain sound, stop thinking about it that way. What the pedal is a tool to shade sound and tone. It's a tool to color sound and tone. It's a tool to build harmony. It's a tool to aid in legato connection. It's a tool to show and to take away permanence. It's a tool to create atmosphere. Even a simple 1-part melodic phrase benefits greatly from intelligent use of the pedal. Here's an example, looking at a nocturne from Chopin, Opus 48, number 1. Now I'm going to play it first, just the melody and with pedal. Okay, now I'm going to play the melody again with no pedal at all. Now, if I asked you, which one of those would you prefer to hear? It's not even really a question, because the answer is unequivocally, without a doubt, the first one, the one with pedal. The with pedal example breathes. It has life. It has more nuance. It has a greater variety of tonal color. It has greater presence. It has greater resonance. It has longer sustain. Why is the example without pedal important? Well, it shows great attention to the motion of the finger and the arm, and it shows that it's possible to play this, well, mostly possible to play this phrase with finger legato, but we're going to go more into that in the next video. Did the example with pedal compromise the clarity attained in the no pedal version? No, it didn't. Now let's go beyond this. We're going to add in the pedaling that you actually need to use if you were to perform these opening phrases with both hands. So here's hands together. Okay, and now just the melody, but using the same pedaling that I would have to use to sustain everything that's going on in the left hand. But here's just the melody. In this case, did the melody get blurred? Yes, it did. Is it inappropriate to the piece? Ironically, the right hand by itself sounds really out of place for Chopin, doesn't it? But that's actually what's being played when both hands are being used. It's kind of an astonishing amount of blur, isn't it? Because of the pedaling that's necessary to perform these particular phrases, showing the melody and the intention of these phrases becomes the most difficult with the pedal. And there's no amount of no pedal practice that is going to prepare you for the changes your hand needs to make when you add the pedal back in. It's kind of counterintuitive because you'd think, well, if I get rid of the pedal, I'll very clearly be able to hear what the right hand is doing, right? And sure, that's accurate. But how are you going to get better at showing that clarity when the pedal is down? And the answer is not to do more or not to start doing no pedal practice, but rather to practice with the pedal. If you intend to use the pedal in performance, which you should in almost all cases, you should fill your ears in practice with the tone and the color and the depth that pedal gives your playing. The crux of being a musician is listening. To paraphrase the famous pedagogue Newhouse, he said, hear first and then play what you've heard. In the case of pedaling, this is the tone and the resonance and the color that we hear in our inner ear, our imaginary ear, right? Before we play, what we hear should be full of those magical qualities that the pedal gives us. It shouldn't be the dry and lifeless performance without pedal. And because of that, we should be feeding our ears the exact tone that we desire. It should be a feedback loop. We imagine the tone created with intelligent pedaling. And then we execute that tone and that pedaling and give that sound back to our ears. If you've enjoyed this content and you want to take your piano playing to the next level, check out my Thinkific page. I've got beginner, intermediate, and advanced masterclasses on some of my favorite pieces of music, and I'm always adding more. You can find the link in the description down below this video. Now, what about the proponents of finger legato, especially finger legato at all costs? Well, sure, there is benefit of working finger legato without the pedal. And again, that's the subject of the next video. But in a great deal of repertoire, it's the pedal that provides connection that the hand physically can't. Let's hear some Grieg. This is Opus 47, number 3, Melody from Lyric Pieces. And I'm going to start by playing it with pedal for you. So there's the opening couple phrases. Now, Grieg wrote not a single slur or legato mark in this score. Does that mean it should all be played detached? Of course not. But listen to what happens to the melody if we play just that line and we play it without using the pedal. I'm not even going to play the second phrase because I think it's really obvious already. It's broken, disjointed, pokey. And to reference what we just finished talking about, it's two-dimensional in tone, not three-dimensional. It's lacking life and it's lacking breath. Let's go back to the brokenness part though. Asking any student to work on this melody without pedal, it would not only be a huge waste of time, it could potentially be detrimental to that student's technique. And here's why. Many of the notes in this melody are repeats of the previous pitch. Because of the physics of the piano, we must release the key in order to strike it again, right? And what happens at the release of a key? The damper inside the piano falls and our sound is cut off. It is physically impossible to play these phrases across this entire piece with finger legato. But if we try, we hold each pitch for as long as we possibly can, and no matter what we do, there will always be a disconnect across each repeated pitch. And the more we try to eliminate that disconnection without using pedal, the more we encourage the hand to press instead of release the key. We encourage a really tense and unhealthy restriking of the pitch. And beyond those negative things, that second pitch is probably not going to be played with a very pleasant tonal color because we must use our playing mechanism with enough fluidity to create nice bloom and round tones. When we play rigidly, which we have to do to re-articulate like that, we end up producing more of a sharp and biting tone, and it's a thin tone that doesn't sing. Now in this last example, using the pedal allows a legato connection to be possible, but it doesn't guarantee that your phrase is going to be legato. And that's because legato is not just not having a gap between two pitches. It is connection in all forms. And I go into that in a lot more detail in this video in your top corner. I've left a link to that video also in the description down below. Now the last point for today, let's say you're starting a new piece. How soon should you incorporate pedal into your learning? If possible, you should do it on your very first sight read. Does that mean your fingers get off easy? No. Their task is just as hard as it's ever been, maybe even harder, like we found in the Chopin example. But the fingers need to be informed by how the pedal is changing the tone and the sustain and the resonance, how it's changing the intention of every note that we play. Learning something without pedal to better train the fingers that I hear people talk about all the time can, first, it can cause poor technical choices like we just established. Two, it can misinform and mistrain our ears about what is happening in the music that we're actually working on. Three, it can promote finger legato above all else when often true finger legato is not the key to playing a beautifully connected phrase. And four, it does not in any way prevent the mess and the blur caused by overuse of the pedal. One of my teachers used to say, "Your pedaling is covering a multitude of sins." But truly, any mess that the pedal makes is not the pedal's fault. It's our ears' fault. It's that we aren't listening to the right details. Sometimes, and more often than it's prescribed by teachers, the fix isn't removing pedal. It's learning to listen to what's going on underneath the pedal. I'm Szczepanek, and you've been watching Pianist Academy, where we make elite piano concepts simple to understand. If you want to check out that video I mentioned earlier about what legato truly is, you can check it out right over here. Practice smarter, not harder, and I'll see you next time.